there. This is a message to those of you who might be pregnant at the moment, or those of you who might hope to become pregnant in the future. Actually, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. One is induction. One is this whole emphasis on induction that we seem to have in our hospital system at the moment. And a lot of people that I know, a lot of people that I've been teaching have been induced routinely before 40 weeks or by 40 weeks. And there's a lot of pressure to be induced. In America, they've got a new system which is being unfolded at the moment, where they're going to routinely suggest induction for women at 39 weeks gestation. The problem with induction, unless it is medically necessary, unless there's a definite medical cause, is that it can very often lead to this cascade of intervention where a woman needs to have an epidural because contractions have become so hard and fast, so very quick and hard and fast, and they don't have the normal cascade of hormones that the fetus's lungs, when they have this molecular change and they signal that they're ready to be born, that also induces this cascade of hormones through the mother, and so therefore she's able to go into a natural labour a lot more easily. So when you don't have that and you are artificially induced, it can very easily lead on to the need for a lot more intervention and a lot of feeling of being in control and a feeling of things happening to you. We don't put any emphasis, we don't put any sort of, what's the word? I can't even think of the word at the moment. What I'm trying to say is that we don't put enough focus on what is going to happen to the woman's mental state, what is going to happen to the woman's body, the pelvic floor. If she ends up having an epidural, she can't feel how she's birthing, maybe needs to then have a forceps delivery, ventouse delivery, potentially then having an emergency cesarean. So you have this cascade of intervention, and a mum who is left feeling, yes, she's got a baby who's okay, seems to be okay, but feeling very disempowered, often quite traumatized, and if there has been damage to the levator ani, if there's been a forceps delivery and damage to the pelvic structure, or a cesarean delivery, and you're cutting through layers of muscle there and fascial system, then down the track, often straight away, but often down the track when they hit the paramenopausal stages of life, women find that the integrity of the pelvic floor has been very compromised, and with changes to the muscular structure that come with perimenopause, often women are then dealing with all sorts of pelvic floor dysfunctions, incontinence and prolapse and stuff which maybe would not have happened had there not been such traumatic intervention during birth. So that's one thing I want to say. Anyway, I was reading last night, well, I've been reading over the last few nights actually, this amazing book from a guy called Matthew Walker, who is a top neuroscientist who is focused on sleep. And he's written this book called Why We Sleep, and it's a brilliant book, and I suggest you all read it because it all talks about, it really puts an emphasis, a big spotlight on why we need to have good quality sleep and 8 hours of sleep. And coming from somebody who has suffered with insomnia for a very long time and is just getting, putting enough emphasis on this area of my life to do something about it, it's gold, it's good stuff, and I wish I had known this earlier. Chapter 5. If you are pregnant, please get hold of this book and please read Chapter 5. Chapter 5 talks about what happens to the brain of a baby as it's developing in utero. And he specifically talks about the last couple of weeks of gestation. And I want you to remember that here in the UK, they say 40 weeks is when we will induce. In China, it's 42 weeks. In France, it's 41 weeks. In America, now it's going to be 39 weeks. So that's when, the system is controlling when a woman will give birth. And we've got to also, I want you to know that normal gestation is between about 37 and about 43. So we don't, it's very hard to say when a baby should be born. But the system wants to tell us when we should have our babies. In the last couple of weeks, the amount of REM sleep, which is when Matthew Walker is saying the synapses, if you like, the roof tiles of the brain, the last part of the brain are being laid down. Incredibly important for the overall development of the human being's brain. Ramps up to about 9 hours. And then the last week of gestation, before that baby is born, for the only time in that person's lifetime, they go to 12 hours in a 24-hour period of REM sleep. And he says that it's during this time, and I've got it up here because I wanted to read this to you. There's no other time in this individual lifetime that they need this rich, feasting on this rich REM sleep. Why is the fetus consuming such volumes of sleep in this last trimester? And the answer is development of the nervous system, and especially the brain. So the REM sleep acts as an electrical fertilizer during this critical phase of early life. Dazzling bursts of electrical activity during REM sleep stimulate the lush growth of neural pathways all over the developing brain, and then furnish each with a healthy bouquet of connecting ends or synapses. So basically, it's like the super highway of potential for that brain is being put down in that last week. Now, what really struck me is that in America, and potentially here in the UK, it's been considered here in the UK, there is going to be a routine induction suggested for healthy women as well. There's nothing wrong with their pregnancy. There's nothing wrong with the baby to be induced at 39 weeks. Now, in the book, and if you read chapter 5, you'll see this. He has done all sorts of research into what happens to rat pups and when they have been deprived of this last bit of REM sleep. And in that immediate prenatal and postnatal period when they're deprived of this crucial sleep. And it's scary because there is a correlation between autistic behaviors and rat pups, autistic behaviors, autistic spectrum disorder, not ADSD, autistic spectrum disorder behaviors, and the deprivation of that last bit of sleep. Okay, so he's not saying, he actually is saying, look, we need to look at this correlation in human beings as well. He's not saying lack of sleep, definitely, or lack of this particular type of sleep in this last week definitely correlates to people with ASD. But he's not also saying that ASD, because a lot of people with ASD don't sleep well, they have melatonin deficits and they have a different sleep pattern to regular brains. That the ASD also causes the sleep problems. But he is saying that there is a correlation there and we need to look into it. Now, I've looked on the internet, and there's nothing being done, there's nothing being said about this at the moment. I'm finding this really, really scary because it pisses me off how many of my students have been told, often by a registrar who just comes in and haven't met before, not their particular obstetrician or not their particular midwife, are told, oh, well, if you let yourself go over 40 weeks, your baby might die, and or the placenta might fail. Incredibly scary and fear-mongering languaging. Any woman who is pregnant, the last thing I want to do is put their baby at risk in any way, shape, or form. But my question is, are we actually risking the mental health of children, of this future generation, by routinely inducing? Really, why is this not being looked into? And it needs to be looked into. So anyway, that's my little rant, and I just wanted to know your thoughts. And please, if you're pregnant, get hold of this book. Read chapter 5 of this book. Read all of it. It's a great book. And let me know your thoughts. So there you go for Tuesday morning. That's my little rant.